Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the hottest name in all of college football, offensive coordinator Brennan Marion out there at UNLV running the go-go offense. It has taken the college football landscape by storm. And a lot of y'all who've been rocking with the boys the last couple of weeks know I was hesitant to really buy into Brennan Marion as a Power 4 offensive coordinator because on the surface, Dill, it looks a little bit gimmicky. My concern was as the novelty of this offense wears off, is it going to be effective for the next 3 to 5 years at the Power 4 level when there's more film and more examples of this offense? Look, I sat down for multiple nights to the last couple of weeks and listen to Brennan Marion give lectures, give talks about this offense. It's hard not to be on board. And I think that the fascinating story about this is Brennan Marion, he developed this offense at the high school ranks. He took over a JV football team that was brand new, wasn't any good. He's like, I can kind of just do what I want. And he starts playing around with this offense. And over the last couple of years and over the last decade, he's kind of put together an offense that is so novel. It's so dynamic that it gives a ton of opposing defenses a lot of problems. I want to get into a little bit of the film and talk about what Brennan Marion's go-go offense brings to the table and why I think it really is going to translate to the Power 4 level. Now, before we get into it, as always, probably some Florida State fans listening to this, some Michigan fans, maybe Oklahoma fans. Would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. I think there's a lot of different takes to have about this offense. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Deal with wherever he goes. We're probably going to do a deep dive in terms of how the personnel, whether he goes to Oklahoma or Florida State, kind of fits. Look, you've been on board with the Brennan Marion offense way before I was, so I'll give you the floor here. What about this go-go offense that Brennan Marion runs has you liking it so much?
And I think even the fact that it's called like the go-go offense almost doesn't exactly represent what it really is. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's kind of just fundamentally a gap scheme, power run kind of base to it. Again, running some different formations, using that two-back system that he likes to use. I think that adds some wrinkles, frankly, that work. It's like, again, it's not like basic I formation power, but it is essentially power. It's essentially a gap scheme run with some wrinkles that have presented a lot of problems for opposing defenses. And I think that, yeah, that can work at the high levels. It's not an option based attack. It's not like some like gimmicky attack. It's a little bit more of a creative system running kind of something old.
What I love about it is it gives you so many different looks. It gives you so many different personnel groupings, but the principles kind of remain the same. And that when you're talking offense and you're talking about scheming offense, it really is how simple can you make it for the offense that's running it, and how complex can you make it look to the opposing defense that's looking at it?
Because
You
at the
see a
end of
lot.
the day, they've run this really efficiently. Like they execute at a really high level. That goes quarterbacks, offensive line, running backs, and wide receivers. So that to me, it like, okay, it's kind of simple in its base. But again, he does some things, he adds some wrinkles that keep teams on their toes,
But
but they execute at a high
But
level.
it is simple. Like, and you said it, like, why do they run it so efficiently? Because it looks complex, but this is even in Brennan Marion's terms. Like, it's relatively simple principles within this offense. Nebraska's offensive coordinator, Coach Satterfield, probably the best example of just trying to do a little too much. And you can tell that their offenses are just kind of confused in terms of what they're being asked to do. There's that fine line between, hey, we want to be complex. We at least want to present that we're being complex, but can you make it simple for the offense so there's quick and easy decisions that you can make? That's kind of what the go-go offense is about. Now, this is right out of Brennan Marion's mouth. We're a two-back run team. We're a two-back vertical shot team. So they're going to run the football. This year at UNLV, they're running the football 64% of the time. That's eighth most in the country. When they do throw the football, they're going to push it down the field. And everybody wanted to get at Matt Sluka because of the completion percentage. And it was low, 43.8%. That is a low completion percentage. Dill's average depth target was 17.6 yards down the field. Over 40% of his drop back throws traveled over 20 plus yards. And so, yeah, on the surface level, that's a really low completion percentage. This is not an offense that is predicated on high completion percentage. This is an offense that's predicated on hitting those explosive plays when the opportunity presents itself. Couple of things before we kind of get into a little bit of the film. Dill, this is something I'll let you speak on. It's kind of quarterback proof. Brennan Marion's been there 2 years now at UNLV. He's worked with 4 different quarterbacks. Every single quarterback can run this offense. And one of the things that I think a lot of offensive minds really struggle with is, hey, what happens when you get kind of a different quarterback, right? When Jimbo Fisher had Jameis Winston, then goes over to Texas A&M and has Kellen Mond or Haynes King, he doesn't know how to call an offense anymore all of a sudden. Like, you look at this system and say, 2 years, 4 quarterbacks, the production never really fell off at all. That's one of the things that stands out to me the most here.
And one thing you probably could criticize about it is there's not a particularly developed intermediate passing attack. And I do think that's something that separates like what those really good quarterback led teams like
Yep.
in Ohio State
Yep.
under Ryan Day, what they can do. But also, like, frankly, he hasn't really had that guy at the quarterback spot. So again, I'm not even necessarily thinking like he couldn't implement part of that. And what they kind of run now is what you said, like they run the ball a lot, they work some underneath stuff, and then they try to hit their shots when they get it. But I'm thinking like when he has a quarterback like one of those high level guys like a Jackson Arnold or any of the other like kind of 5-star level players, I do wonder if there's an ability to kind of add that part of the game into what he does. Because again, at the end of the day, I think what he does is he gets his guys executing at a high level, wide receiver, quarterback, off
It's
like all those positions. Like I don't think that he couldn't run that kind of into
one of
his.
the things I have in my notes still that kind of made me even feel better, because my biggest concern was like, all right, as the novelty of this offense wears off, like, is it going to continue to be effective? I think, and there's probably some truth to it. Like, it's so effective right now because there are just a lot of things that we haven't really seen offenses run, like 2 running back sets all split to the same side. It's a weird formation. What happens in 3 years when there's a lot of film on this offense? And Brennan Marion says, hey, we're always adding and we're always tweaking and we're always changing and adapting. That's something that I like. And kind of what you said, when he has an access to maybe a little bit better quarterback play, you might see this offense change a little bit and ask a little bit more of the quarterback. Now, one of the things that I think makes it so difficult, the formations and personnel groupings, they throw a lot at you, Dale. I think mostly that two back set, which forces defenses, and Brennan Marion explains it probably a little bit better than me. One, it forces defenses to run certain coverages that he wants to attack. But I think more importantly, it really messes with the spacing of teams. They want to take it vertically down the field, but if you have 2 running backs and a tight end attached, like, you got to respect that personnel grouping and start walking some safeties into the box. And so the different looks and different formations and personnel groupings, you're going to see a ton of different personnel groupings in this offense. It's really hard for a defense to match what they throw at you and kind of given the drive, because they want to run fast. They don't do a lot of subs mid drive, but they'll kind of work in a lot of different personnel groupings, which for a defense, I think is very difficult to match.
And again, that ability to in that set use your running backs as pass catchers really
Yes.
effectively, not just
Yeah.
kind of running basic like flares out to the boundary, like those kind of traditional things that again, I look at like a Michigan offense. What's a frustrating thing is their answer to getting their running backs involved in the passing attack is running swing screens essentially. It hasn't been effective. You look like Brendan Marion, whether it's him training his running backs properly and getting them acclimated to being able to run like real legitimate routes that they can hit and they can hit for
A
yard.
lot of wheel routes,
Consistent.
that have been super effective that I've watched. One of the other things, and I probably should have said this when we were talking more of the philosophy of the offense. And I love this, is probably my favorite thing about Brendan Marion's mentality about football. Get your best players to football. And that's like what he says all the time. It's like, when we identify guys that are dudes for our team, we are going to make it a point to get them involved in this offense. And I think it's clearly illustrated this year. Though Ricky White probably shouldn't be at UNLV, probably should be in the NFL or a Power 4 team catching for over 1,000 yards. Stayed with UNLV, 104 targets on the year. The next closest targeted pass catcher has 34. And like, so what does it look like when he has 2 or 3 Ricky Whites at a Power 4 program? But at the end of the day, like, he simplifies the sport. And that's something that when you see some offenses struggle and we're just banging the table for, like, get this kid to football more, he does it. And he recognizes, especially at the collegiate level where you just have some cats who are different, let them go take over games. It probably wouldn't work as much in the NFL because everybody's a stud in the NFL, but at college, whether you're in the Big 10 or the SEC, the Big 12, you got guys who are just a little bit different. He is going to center his best players, which is another thing I love. Now, Dill, let's get into the run game first. When you run the football 64% of the time, you see a lot of offenses just bang their head against the wall and run the same kind of run scheme. He's going to run the football a lot, but he's going to run the football in so many different ways. This is probably one of my favorite concepts here. Second play of the game against UNLV, basically kind of a simple read option with a triple option extended, right? So we're reading this edge. He's going to crash in. We're going to keep, but we're also going to have this pitch option as well. This is kind of military academy-esque, and it gives defenses a lot of problems. And we're busting off for what, 80, 70 yards here. I mean, that's probably my favorite look, where you are essentially got two really simple reads here, right? You're reading this unblocked edge defender. He's crashing down on the running back. We're going to pull it. And then we got numbers to the boundary. And again, he says it doesn't matter what kind of quarterback he has. You probably do want an athletic quarterback, because the quarterback does get involved in the run game quite often. And then the second one you look at is, hey, if you want to respect what we can do, we just burned you on that in the first drive. All right, third drive of the game, we're just going to run some base and inside zone, work up to the second level. This off unblocked edge rusher going to the quarterback. Look what it does to the off-ball backers too, though. I mean, with so much going on and so many different reads, I mean, you're reading this guy, but this off-ball linebacker is totally lost. He doesn't know, takes a bad angle. And when you take a bad angle in this game with the spacing that they have, it's going to go for big yardage. Now, we need this running back to make that safety miss in the open field. Doesn't. But Dill, the ability to run the football in so many different ways. If you're going to run it 64% of the time, it better be diverse. It's pretty damn diverse in this go-go offense.
And that's why I think it's different than like the classic military style doing it, or even maybe the Georgia Tech way under Paul Johnson. Like, you're running more of a traditional rushing attack. You're just running some stuff off of it that opens some things up. So again, I think it can be more consistent. I think you can rattle off big plays. It's not running like that dive, and then you have the pitch man. Like, that's a different
he has a lot of humility. You know, and this is kind of how he said the origins took place. Like, I've studied pretty much every offense that we've seen in this sport. We all know how this sport of football has changed. I just took bits and pieces. You know, stuff has stood the test of time. And so I just took bits and pieces and kind of just put it together in this go-go offense. So a lot of that stuff you saw back in the olden days, he's kind of bringing back. It looks a little bit different, but a lot of those principles kind of remain the same. Then just like talk about like creativity. Like, this is going to go down in the stat category as a pass play. This is essentially just another option play here, right? We're reading, extending, and now we got a little throw out that we can do too. Goes for big yardage. And he makes a very big emphasis on perimeter blocking, which I think is important. We see a lot of college wide receivers just not want to block. He's like, if you want to play for our team, you got to block on the perimeter. We're doing the rest in space. Dill, moving on to the pass game. Let me get my slides right here. The pass game. You don't throw the football that much in the go-go offense, right? It is a quote unquote, Brennan Marion's quotes, power run game. But when you do throw the football, he's going to try to push it vertically. And not only push it vertically, he's going to use play action, right? And this is like, as Michigan fans, like, what frustrates me so much about this Michigan offense in 2024, we run the football about 60% of the time. That's top 25 in the country, most notably because we don't have quarterback play. But for God knows why, we don't run any play action. If you're going to run the football 64% of the time, you better be using play action. That's exactly what Brennan Marion does. Play action on 47% of dropbacks this year for UNLV. And again, Dill, it's predicated on pushing the ball down the field. And when you give those different formations and when you run the football as much as this go-go offense does, if you want to stop it, especially with the two-back set, you better damn well be bringing your safeties into the box, or else they just won't throw it at all and just run all over you. And when you bring your safeties into the box, and Brennan Marion says this, we just need one wide receiver that can work vertically, baby. That's all we need. And you see them attack that deeper third. And again, are they going to throw for 75% completion percentage like Will Stein and Oregon's offense? No, but they're going to hit those home run plays that are so valuable for college football offenses.
You want to be explosive, but I still do think there's an element of people like underrating how well he develops a passing game that I think, again, if they wanted to be more efficient and have a higher completion percentage, they could. Because when they get to the stuff that is like their high completion percentage throws, if you will, that stuff underneath, their quick slants, their stuff to the boundary, that's really effective. And I think that also gets down to like probably the most underrated portion of his game is his ability to develop talent and be precise. Like their wide receivers run precise routes. Like when they pull linebackers into the box with their rushing attack, they run routes right behind it and they can hit stuff pretty consistently with those slants and their outs. Like there's a basis of what they can do in the passing attack that really does work pretty consistently, as much as like the completion percentage is haven't always been where you
Well,
maybe
I
want
think
them.
also, sorry to cut you off, but I think it also is kind of like dependent on what quarterback you have. So like with Jaden Maava last year, a little bit more of a refined, better arm. There was a little bit more high percentage throws involved in the offense. All right, Mass Luka can't. I mean, Mass Luka is not a great thrower of the football, as the 43% completion percentage shows. All right, well, if you're not great consistently, we only need you to be great a couple times, pushing it down the field. And so the offense, and that kind of speaks to Brennan Marion as a whole here. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if we have a quarterback that's just not part of his game, we're going to figure out a way to run this offense with Mass Luka. And they leaned a little bit more into what he could do as an athlete. And the offense was humming with Mass Luka, who was only completing 43% of his balls. Now, you look at the passing attack, and this is kind of what it is. And again, one, formation condensed. We're going to bring you all in. We're going to force Kansas to play with the 7-man box here. We're going to go heavy play action. And again, when you're running the football 64% of the time, look at what play action does. I mean, everybody's stepping in. We're only running 2 routes down the field here, Dale. And we're going to see some tight ends kind of leak out. We're only running 2 routes down the field. We're going to, one, have a clear out, and then we're going to have one of those deep overs, and it's going to be wide open one because you're sucking all these underneath defenders in on the play action. Easy throw and catch for Mass Luka. Mass Luka ain't a good throw of the football, but he can make that throw any day of the week, and you're chunking them up. Again, I think this offense, it puts pressure on opposing defenses in so many different ways. I think on the surface, it can look a little gimmicky because it's formations that you haven't really seen. It's personnel groupings that you haven't always
Well,
seen
I also think
consistently.
there's like a stigma on the option, and I'm not necessarily like being the advocate of like base your offense as the a run option attack. Like I think there's a reason almost no teams do it. But I don't hate the idea of doing it when you can get into a wrinkle. It's like you go to that Michigan game from 2023, like that defense just had them overwhelmed. There were a couple times where they could take away that aggression using the option attack and hit a big play off it. Like I don't think that's necessarily something to like scoff at or like, oh, that's like,
Yeah, well, I
that's
think
not
that's
real
part
football.
of it, though, and I probably am guilty of it, where it's like that kind of reminds me of the
Like if you
military
see a
academy.
triple option and it works, like just take it for what it is. It was a well-designed play. It's not
And
like
he
they're
doesn't
running
he
triple
doesn't build the whole offense off of it, but it's
option.
incorporated in that go-go offense. A lot of different concepts are incorporated in this offense, and I think that's kind of where we'll close. Is
And he
that
sequences them correctly. Like he runs them at the right time. They
yeah,
work.
he's a very good play
They've been
caller.
moving the ball for 2 straight years at a really high level. Like
Well,
it's all come
that's
together and
that's
worked really well.
that's probably how you close it. Is you can look at it and maybe have your certain opinions. The points per game, the yards per play, that those speak for themselves. Now, again, the conversation is, as this offense loses its novelty, will it be as effective 3 to 4 years down the road? The one thing that makes me optimistic that it will be is that Brennan Marion's an innovator, man. He created this offense. He can continue to change it and continue to adapt it and implement those wrinkles where I think it can be sustained success at the Power 4 level. I don't think Brennan Marion's just going to be an offensive coordinator at the P4 level. I think he seems like he's destined to be a head coach somewhere awfully soon. For Florida State fans, Oklahoma fans, Michigan fans who are checking this out, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.